Hi, this is Matt at State of Flux. Welcome back to my channel. I'm continuing on with my Godzilla walkthrough of their feature films, and it might have been a while since you've seen me. There was a couple cosmetic issues going on with the house and some of the plumbing, and so there was fans going, and it was a thing. So now I have proper sound with which to work, and I can continue on with these videos. The next video I'm doing is Godzilla Raids Again, also known as Gigantus or Gigantus, the Fire Monster. I've seen it both ways. I'm going to focus on the Godzilla Raids Again of it all, but I will touch on, much like my Gojira review, the Americanized version of the film. This is the far inferior sequel to the original Godzilla, the first direct follow-up that would kind of get retconned out of existence in future eras. This is still within the Showa era, and in recent years this movie has had a little bit of an uptick in appreciation that I don't really understand. Apparently, also when it originally came out, this film was critically in Japan perceived as the better film of the two, Gojira and Godzilla Raids Again, or whatever the Japanese equivalent of that title was. I have never really responded well to this film. I think it is a cheap reinterpretation of the same movie, but stripped of any context or relevancy. I.e., it didn't want to get political. Largely, there's like an element that is suggested in the film that kind of works and is kind of there, but it also is only just kind of there, so it gets pulled. But it operates under the same framework of the first movie, which is you have these characters and how they interact with each other. Who get confronted by a great big giant monster. This time, monsters. There's two of them, and then the story continues on, and as it does, the characters, the dynamics continue to shift and whatnot until somebody is taken out of the dynamic. The film becomes a soft tragedy, and then Godzilla faces his doom. So it operates very much the same. I think it's infinitely weaker, but bolstered by the likability of the two main fighter pilot guys. The movie starts with them, and you get to experience a little bit of time with these two characters who are interesting, nowhere near as interesting as any of the characters from that original film, but interesting enough, and as I say, they're fun, they bounce off each other kind of well, and then there's a world where this turns into like soft comedy, and it kind of works. But instead they go to this island and they see two giant monsters battling, one of whom is another version of Godzilla, and the other is a new monster, which we get Anguirus, who is always been one of my favorite Godzilla monsters, and it's unfortunate that this was his introduction. He's not in much of the movie, he's taken out pretty quick, but this is the first film that establishes what would be the trajectory of most of the rest of the franchise, which is Godzilla pitted against another monster. Again, stripped of relevancy. The idea that that Godzilla is a reflection or an echo of the ghost of the atomic warfare that rattled the country is largely gone. You have touches, like brushstrokes of it with the doctor character returning from, or the professor character returning from the first film. Yet again, can't remember the actor's name because I am a failure, but he's the star of Ikiru and Seven Samurai and any number of other films, including Godzilla, and he has a brief scene in this one. Is one of the few films where they carry on continuity of not only the monsters, but the characters. Though that story element is dropped, they talk very briefly in a scene or two, like the bureaucratic nature of trying to figure out what to do with a monster now that there's not one but two of them. And that's touched on, like, that could have been interesting, but it really goes nowhere. The thing that I found most interesting is the bandits who are running about the city, who end up just falling under Godzilla and Anguirus' rubbish. The idea of, like, people taking advantage of the everybody looking one way, so they're going to do naughty things therein is kind of an interesting idea, and something that we definitely did see even in our recent history here, be it COVID-19 related or any social movements of recent years. It comes up and it happens, and I think that it's kind of cool that this movie acknowledges it. However, it doesn't do so in any intellectual or intelligent way like the first film did. It just kind of is like, hey, this happens. That's it. There you go. The special effects in this film, like, don't really look that good. The suits, I thought, were photographed infinitely better than the first one. The first one had almost noirish lighting for most of the human interactive moments. Ishiro Honda brought, like, a noir quality to the human element of the story, but when the monster shows up, he gave you the monster in his full glory. You got to see Godzilla, but he lit him in a way that made him very menacing to look at. Here he's, like, overlit, and the angles with which he's photographed are more dead on rather than at angular shots. So when you see Godzilla, he doesn't have the menace. This is a transition of Godzilla is a horror film to Godzilla might be more of an action film. And with the next installment, Godzilla might be a family film. And that's something that this whole franchise has struggled with the tone of, because there are definitely several movies within the franchise that maintain the horror elements that accompany the sci-fi monster movie that was the origin. Most of them, however, are more reflective of this film. Simple versus matches. You have two people who are obviously in suits, like rubber suits. I know the first one was more concrete suit, but rubber suits battling each other. And it becomes pretty uncompelling, at least as of this film. Again, I'm not really sure why people kind of gravitate towards this one. I think it's because the black and white of it helps. The fact that it has a continued character continuity from the first one, I think people kind of couple them as the two, but not unlike, I mentioned King Kong as a strong comparison to Godzilla last time, where I think Godzilla comes out the better. I think that this film can be likened to Son of Kong, which was the King Kong sequel that came out the following year that had some character continuity. It had some of the same vibes, but tonally was off, and it just failed to even remotely come close to that first film. And I would almost argue that this film is not as good as Son of Kong, which is not a particularly good movie. Yeah, this movie just doesn't really fire for me. And I'm curious to know, if you do like this movie, what is it about this film that you like? Because I just don't get it. I remember having watched the Japanese cut, the Japanese cut is significantly better than Gigantus the Fire Monster, or Gigantus the Fire Monster, that I grew up watching. I'd always bought a VHS copy that was called Godzilla Raids Again, but when you put it on, it was perplexingly called Gigantus the Fire Monster, and that's how they referred to him. And his voice was different. He had Anguirus' voice, and then Anguirus had occasionally another monster voice, and I swear once you heard the Godzilla voice, but it was only once, and everything was just weird. That was US tinkering, but they didn't put any heart or soul into it at all. like they did with the first one. I sort of sung the praises of Godzilla King of the Monsters. I know some people unfairly attack that movie, and I maintain that that movie's unfairly attacked. But the thought put into that Americanized cut of Gojira is considerably better than anything they did with this. Now, researching upon it afterwards, it sounds like they were trying to just take the conceptual idea of this stateside, and they wanted to recut, not necessarily recut the film, but refilm the film using the basis of the idea of this film as the volcano monsters. And it was going to be about a T-Rex and a Stegosaurus that had multitudinous battles across islands and country. And then there was going to be a whole human element, and they were going to kind of revamp the character dynamic within this film for an American audience with American actors, and they were going to slap a budget on it, and then the money fell through, and then they just were like, well, we already bought the rights to this, let's just retinker with it, and they put it out. Weirdly enough, it was Warner Brothers that put it out, who would get the franchise back about 50, 60-ish years later and release Godzilla 2014, and we'll get there eventually. But yeah, this movie just, it doesn't work. The Japanese cut is significantly better than that American cut, but that doesn't mean that it's a good movie. It's not unlike, well, we're on the subject of Warner Brothers, Justice League, the theatrical cut versus Justice League, the director's cut. Just because the director's cut is more cohesive and tonally equivalent to the first forays of that universe doesn't mean that it's a better film, really. It just means that it's more tonally accurate. This doesn't mean it's a good movie, so we should stop giving it its praise as one. Godzilla Raids Again really isn't a good movie. It does not deserve the accolades that some people have kind of given it as one of the better Godzilla sequels, because I think it falls drastically short of a lot of them, and that's saying something within the Showa era especially. But yeah, not a fan of this movie. I think the first movie was a 4-star perfect film. Certainly the Japanese cut and the American film I would also give 4 stars, and that might have a little bit of nostalgia tied in there, but I think both cuts of that movie are extraordinarily good, and I think the Gigantus the Fire Monster I would just give maybe 1 star, and the Japanese cut of this maybe 2, and that might be just me being a little generous, but I defy you to watch that final battle in this film one more time with the planes dropping the bombs and the ice on Godzilla and try to find any worth to that, because it's the same shot over and over and over again. There's nothing compelling happening on screen. The movement of Godzilla is almost non-existent, if in fact he's moving at all, and it's just, this is how to make... Unfortunately, this is what comes to mind when you think of... when certain audiences think of Godzilla. Dopey guys in dopey-looking rubber suits who battle each other very, like, kind of shakily, and then they fall into water, and then you have, like, people attacking with tiny little bursts of light that's supposed to be like gunshots all around them, as like Godzilla is kind of moving very robotically and not well. That's kind of what people think, and it's because of movies like this that have no care to them that the first one is not reflective of. And so yeah. But I'm babbling. I should have called this channel, hey, I babble. Movie Babble. That would have been a good name. Maybe I can shift that, but State of Flux it is for now. What do you think of Godzilla Raids Again? Do you think I'm right about this, or do you think I'm off base? Let me know what your appreciation level of this film is in the comments down below. And up next, we will review King Kong vs. Godzilla. 1965 version, I think it was 65, might have been 63. The 60s version of the Kong and Godzilla fight, not the 2021 version. We'll touch on that later. Yes, and also stay tuned for other reviews I have coming your way. I hope to have a Nope review up over the course of the weekend, and hopefully even a Marcel Lachelle with Shoes On review, as well as my continued look back at the films of Kevin Smith, moving on to his television work. I'm talking Clerks, or Clerks Uncensored. Stay tuned for those. Thanks for watching. Peace.